Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Today we have a special guest, a veteran in the transportation sector, Mr. Paul Cassetta. Paul Cassetta is a director of fleet at DPV Transportation, 36 years in the ground transportation sector, with numerous of experience in the public and private sector. As an addition, Paul has worked for the MBTA for 23 years.
Correct.
Yep. And he's a safety lead investigator in a subject matter and vehicle maintenance. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So, Paul, tell us a little bit about how you got started 36 years ago in this industry.
Yeah, it's quite a while ago. I started in school, went to vocational school, learned the trade, and at part of vocational school is 1 week you work in a shop, the next week you do go to school, and I got various jobs in different shops, from sweeping the floor, washing cars, all the way up to where I am today. So I have a lot of experience in different industry, different companies.
Awesome. What caught your interest to get into the sector, by the way?
So as a child, I was always into how things work and what mechanically makes things function, and taking apart the VCRs and things that we had around the house. And when I got my first car, it was a gift from somebody, and it needed front brakes. So in the middle of the street on the sidewalk, I took it apart and did a brake job and said, hey, this is working for me pretty good. So from there, it just grew.
Awesome. So tell us about your first job. How did you get started?
So my first job was actually at an auto body shop, and I'll never forget, I was 16 years old, and I went in and met with the shop foreman, and he says, I'm going to buy you your first tools and everything. And I was so excited because I had just started in the industry, and he says, come back tomorrow, we'll get you started. And I show up, and he has a dual oscillator, a DA it's called, it's for sanding. And he says, follow me, and I got my new tool, and I'm all excited. And we go into the back of the shop, and there's about 7 or 8 40-foot long buses, much like the ones we have at DPV, that I needed to sand down. So he did me a favor by buying me the tool, but it was a lot of work ahead of me for that career, for that day.
Okay. And then from there, what happened?
I went to different shops, different opportunities come up, and a lot of growth, and, just started learning the trade again from the ground up. You have to do a lot of experience. It doesn't come overnight. It's something that takes years and years to become masterful at. A lot of people think, backyard mechanic is the same as somebody who's a technician, and there's a big difference.
Define that a little bit, because yes, I am one of those that as a CEO, I could also make that assumption. So especially nowadays, what is the difference between a technician and a good mechanic?
So the mechanical skill can be there, but it's also knowing the computer aspect of it, the electronic aspect of it. A lot of people can rebuild engines and transmissions and do brake jobs and change spark plugs and stuff like that. But getting a true technician that knows how to diagnose, troubleshoot electrical, learn the different softwares that you have to tell you the various codes that are stored in the ECM to troubleshoot and diagnose where the actual problem is. A lot of the buses nowadays have, most of them, the newer ones have gateway systems, which is an electronic computer system spread throughout the vehicle that isolates in different sections what it controls, and knowing how to read those different modules to isolate your troubleshooting a lot quicker saves a lot of time and makes it a lot easier. But if you don't know how to work that system, then it can be even more difficult.
Totally. Very well said. So bring us back. So you did a good job, then you started working at different shops. And then from there, where did you end up going, and how did you end up at the T?
So I was working at a shop in Braintree, and I was one of the lead mechanics there, doing engine work and, you know, troubleshooting, doing the electrical problems. And I had a friend of mine who had worked at the T for a long time. I didn't even know they had bus mechanics at that point. And he brought me in one day and said, "Hey, there's a posting up here. You want to apply for it?" So I had to go take a test to get onto the list of selection to be selected. And I got selected. I became a mechanic. We call a machinist at the T, bus mechanic, pretty much is what it is. And within the year of completing my phasing in, I became a four-person, which runs different garages at the T. We have 9 different garages that run bus fleets. And, from there, I just moved up and kept on going. And then I became a mechanical four-person. And that's been doing my career there as the four-person, running to Everett shops, running the different rehab programs that rebuild the bus from the ground up. And, an opportunity came up in the safety department to become a safety lead investigator, subject matter expert in vehicle maintenance. So if anything occurs, T is a vast system. We have over 1,200 buses and numerous train systems. If anything occurs as a safety event, an accident or some kind of mechanical failure, I go out and investigate the mechanical part of it and let them know what occurred.
Got it.
What failure happened.
Got it. And that includes, Paul, safety incidents, I'm assuming, obviously. So
correct.
If it's God forgives, there's a fatal accident, then you go in and investigate what happened?
Yes. Yep.
Got it. So that's why you were fully aware of what happened on the last, with one of our competitors that had, unfortunately, an unfortunate situation and a fatality. And situations like that, you will go in and examine what actually ended up happening with the bus.
Yep. So you go over the mechanical records, go over everything that's been done, what happened at the scene. It seems like TV, but skid marks and length of this and length of that, and where it ended up and how it tipped over or whatever the situation is. So that all does play a role in putting the pieces together and solving the puzzle of what mechanical failure or operator failure happened to make that incident occur.
Got it. Thank you, Paul. So tell us a little bit about, for all the listeners too, as you know, we have listeners in the transit authority space, public sector, private sector, other bus operators, truck companies, business owners and operators. What are how did you get started at DPV, and what is your role? So that way, for all the listeners that are listening to the show, they could understand what is your role at DPV and what is it that you do on a daily basis to get a general understanding as well.
So I had also worked at other competitors before DPV Transportation, and I was a supervisor and pretty much running bus garages for a number of years at different competitors and other companies. I shouldn't say competitors. We're not competing with them. But, and then, that opportunity was posted for a fleet maintenance manager at DPV. So I applied and went in and actually got the position, and been there over a year now, and moved up to director of fleet, and been very happy. I mean, we have a great team of people there, and nice equipment. What drove me into DPV first was seeing the Encore buses going around. They looked really nice, and I said, "Wow, that looks like a great company to work for." So I pursued it.
Awesome, perfect. So let's dive a little bit deeper now into the weeds of fleet maintenance. What would you recommend for folks that are managing fleet? First of all, what is the main concerns from safety and operations? Well, not so much from operations, from safety and maintenance that you see at, when you're out there, whether it's at the T or seeing private and public operators, what creates concerns and red flags for you as a safety and maintenance director?
So the big concern is making sure that you have a safe fleet, making sure that you maintain it the way it's supposed to be maintained, and making sure when it's not, if something gets turned in on a DVIR safety related, to pull that vehicle off the road. There's been too many times where I've seen safety events happen which could have been prevented. It's because they say, "Oh, let's do one more run. Let's do another 2 nights and we can get that back tomorrow. After the weekend, we'll," and when it's something that's safety related, and it might seem like a small problem to the operator or to the operations end of the business, but to fleet, it can turn into a bigger snowballed effect, from a flat tire or a squeaky noise that can turn into something major. So to have a qualified, certified mechanic look at that, or the fleet director or the fleet manager, and say, hey, you know what, that can't be used because we have a bigger problem than you think. So that is
very well said, Paul. And for me personally, as a CEO and entrepreneur, thank God that I'm not interfering with your operations. Let's just say it, right? Because otherwise, I will be asking fleet, hey, how come, how come we took this bus out of operations? Can we send it, as you mentioned, for another run or another 10 runs? Because as entrepreneurs, we worry about profit margins and marketing and making sure that we could get the next, sort of profit going. And thank God that, that we have folks like you to make sure that the company and our passengers are mainly safe, from a safety standards. So that's sort of the issue that you see. And what would be your recommendations for other operators that are dealing with other entrepreneurs that are on a daily basis, so in the weeds of making sure that they want to run the shop when they have guys, professional directors of fleet like yourself, to sort of mitigate that risk, right? And to create that awareness to, hey, let me do my job so that way we make sure that we keep everybody safe and the business is actually moving forward, not backwards.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have qualified people in those positions and have the trust in those people that you hired. Go through an interview process, make sure you have the right person in the right seat and trust them. Like I stated earlier, something that could be as small as a noise and somebody says, it's just a noise, not a big deal. Then all of a sudden you look into it and you find that something's broken or brakes are worn down where the rotors are cracked or, these various things that can happen that only will create a small noise, but it's a major problem, and allowing the time to take those vehicles out of service, repair them correctly, make sure that they're done correctly, road test the vehicle afterwards, and look for other problems while it's in. I mean, one thing I understand being so long in this business is they're not making money if they're not out on the road transporting people, but it costs more if they break down with the people on board because you didn't pay attention to the smaller items that need to be addressed.
That is very well said. And that is one of the things that is, as a CEO, is very hard for me, so hard for me to understand, right? So switching a little bit of the subject, what are the most common challenges you encounter in your role, whether it's in fleet or maintenance?
Finding good help. The industry, I grew up in a time where everything rotted out and wore away quick and we were doing oil changes and tune-ups and brakes and everything so fast. And nowadays they make vehicles at 100,000 mile spark plugs and, exhaust systems that never rot away. And they've hurt the industry by making a better vehicle, which takes away from people wanting to get into that mechanic field because there's not many opportunities to do that. So I think finding and again, like I stated in the beginning, the expertise comes with time. So you have to find these veterans mechanics that, have invested all this money in these tools, invested the time in the schooling to learn. And it's a hard thing to locate somebody with the technical skills of the computer, the electronics on board, and the mechanical skill to troubleshoot and repair things correctly the first time. So I think finding the correct help is one of the biggest obstacles right now in the industry, because the younger generation, again, doesn't have the experience or is not interested in becoming into that field.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what is the statistics, Paul, about the younger generation wanted to become, mechanics, especially diesel mechanics. So, like, what are you, based on your experience, what are you doing to either retain the talent that you have right now or to bring new talent into the door?
So I've worked with a mentoring program for quite a few years now where vocational students, much like I was back in the day, we mentor them. We bring them in and show them the facility, let them work, a couple of days here and there to, get their hands into it and see if it's for them or not for them. Because there are people that get involved in it, and they think it's going to be a career for them. And then they realize, you know what, I'm really not into this as much as I thought I was. but mentoring them to make sure they make the correct decision, to make a career opportunity, and to share that experience and knowledge with them so they can make the correct decisions to, hey, you know what, I need to go to this school, or I need to follow through with this, or I'm more apt to do an electrical work as opposed to mechanical work, and vice versa. Or like I said, finding that person that says, you know what, this just isn't for me, and I thought it was. And so I've been in that mentoring program for quite a while. We worked with different high schools in different cities around the local area. Just getting out and talking to people, and the younger generation that are kind of into it. I have a couple of nephews, and they're mechanical, and we've had these discussions of where they can go, where it can grow, and some have maintained it and pursued that career, and others have said, you know what, not for me. I'm going to move on to something else.
Totally. What other concerns and obstacles do you normally experience when your field?
The cost of everything nowadays. Me trying to explain to the CEO that maintenance is never going to make money. It's an expense, but you have to maintain vehicles to keep them on the road. You'll find a lot of people nowadays, they buy a vehicle, and in 3 or 5 years, they trade it in, just get another vehicle. You can't do that with a fleet. These are very, very costly vehicles, and they cost a lot to maintain. But if you don't maintain them, it's going to cost you even more in the long run. So it's definitely having your programs in place, following through with them, and making sure that you keep these pieces of equipment on the road to make money for the organization.
Got it. Thank you, Paul. What would you say is the 3 programs that will help you either maintain that cost or reduce the cost, and overall having the equipment in a workable and safe environment with that consistency that clients want?
That's a good question. So the environment plays a role in that. We're up here in New England where we have hot summers and cold winters. And so a winterization and a summerization program, which has been implemented in many garages that I worked at, is a key factor to making sure you're ready for that temperature change, keeping the vehicles running, keeping the operators and the passengers happy with the temperature inside the vehicle. So those are 2 that are very critical up here in this area, a winterization and a summerization program. And again, the actual daily maintenance and maintaining of the equipment. So when it comes back to be washed and fueled, you have your fuelers and your wash crew, checking the fluids, checking the lights, making sure everything's out. It could go out this morning with all the lights working and come back tonight with 4 of them out. And it happens that quick. You could go through different fluids quickly and not have an issue, but just burning them up or a slight leak somewhere that you can't find. And, if you don't notice it on a daily basis, things change. It can leak out quick. It can leak out slow. You have to maintain that. I think that's the other program.
Totally. Thank you, Paul. So moving forward and switching a little bit of subject, what innovations would you like to see in the transportation space that will make your job much easier?
Innovations. I think user-friendly software is very important to have something that you can hook up. I mean, they've done a lot of, from when I was starting in the industry up until now, they've done a lot of changes to standardize different softwares on the equipment itself, and making it so it's kind of generalized. You can hook up a scanner to it and find out on different pieces of equipment what the error codes is. But I think they could do a little bit more work to make it a little easier to troubleshoot, to go through. The software is a lot easier, make them very user-friendly. So you're not searching to try to find out how to do something. It's a little bit more plug and play. I think is a great step.
Got it. Thank you, Paul. And then in regards to, as you know, we talk a lot about the future of transportation and how innovation and how fast this industry is moving, especially with the huge boom that we have of electrification. What are your thoughts, especially whether it's at the T or at DPV? What is your perspective on electrification and just running electrical vehicles?
So I've worked on hybrid vehicles. I've worked on CNG controlled vehicles, diesel, gas, everything that's been out in the industry. And, it gets put out first as the greatest new thing, and then you find the problems go along with it. I know on CNG vehicles, which is an alternative fuel, which everybody was looking for a couple of years back, the tanks have a life expectancy. And once that life expectancy is over, it costs a lot of money to have those tanks replaced to keep that vehicle running. The same thing with electrical vehicles. It is a great innovation. It's helping the carbon footprint across the planet. I think it is the way to go. We need a lot of infrastructure in place to maintain those vehicles and get better mileage out of the chargings. But again, once that vehicle, the battery reaches its life cycle, recycling it, trying to find ways to dispose of it, and the cost alone to have it replaced is pretty very expensive right now. So it's something that needs to be a little more manageable for organizations with a fleet of 50 or 90 buses and pieces of equipment to maintain that, because that's a huge cost to once that life cycle is reached.
Totally. And you mentioned batteries. What is your perspective and input when it comes into batteries? Like, based on your experience, what are you seeing? The cost to replace a battery on a bus? What's your overall perspective?
So I ran a program that we had a life cycle was reached, and we need to rebuild the battery tubs, is what we call them. And I had to acquire $10 million to have the supply of parts available. That's not including the rebuild labor itself, to have the parts available to rebuild those battery tubs for a number of vehicles. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was about an average of $46,000 per battery tub to have it rebuilt with the components. So it can run
$6,000 for
correct.
Each battery?
For each battery tub. So the tub is the whole unit that controls the vehicle. You have to buy certain parts. Only certain people make them. Certain companies make them. It's at a very, very expensive cost. And I think until it's researched and companies and CEOs find out the cost behind maintaining or replacing these vehicles or components is such at a high cost, it kind of deters them from doing that transition over to a complete electrical fleet. I think once we get that cost down and maintenance and longer life batteries, life cycles for the batteries, longer mileage that can extend, I think you'll see more people, more companies getting into that transition.
Yeah. I appreciate, Paul, your input here, because it's very well said and very insightful. Most importantly, at the end of the day, I always ask customers, especially Fortune 1000 or Fortune 1000 companies or public transit authorities, who's paying for the tab, right? Because private operators cannot afford paying $47,000 for the battery. So at the end of the day, the consumer is paying for it. Number two, the fleet is 3 times as higher. And then I like what you mentioned, before the CNG was the hottest thing of the press. Now everybody wants electrical vehicles. And I'm wondering at what point there's going to be a new wave of a new solution, the most, newer innovation, where everybody's going to want to jump on that bandwagon. So it's a really interesting topic that I wish I had the crystal ball to know.
Yeah, I wish I did too, because that would be great to know. But yes, alternative fuels, a couple of years, 10 years back was a hot thing, and everybody was transferring over, and we set up a few CNG stations across this area, and it kind of fizzled out once the cost of everything came into light. And I believe electrical vehicles are going to go the same route. We have a lot of charge stations set up. There are a few vehicles out there, but nothing compared to what there is as far as gas and diesel. Again, once those costs come down, if they do, and the life expectancy is longer, I think it'll be a lot broader consumption from the consumers to buy those vehicles and keep the planet cleaner.
Totally. And then, Paul, based on your perspective, how is the demand, or actually not the demand, how trained are, based on your perspective, mechanics to work on electrical vehicles? Is it very complicated as well, or how's the pool of associates to work on those type of vehicles?
It's very complicated. You need to buy special tooling. You need to buy, go to certain schooling. And again, you're only going to be as good as the teacher who's showing you. So everything changes now so rapidly. Today we buy a laptop and 3 weeks from now, it's outdated, and we think we got the latest thing. It's such an evolving industry with the electric vehicles that, a month or 6 months from now, it could be a completely different industry from what we have right now. So yeah, the tooling's different, the schooling is different, and to find the qualified mechanics to work on those vehicles is going to be very difficult. It's a constant cycle of training.
And is it based on each, or is it based on each or different manufacturing companies that this technician has to specialize? Or is it?
Yeah.
Yes. It's not like one provider, right? They're gonna have to take different.
Yeah, it's much like GM and Ford, and it's the same concept. A gas vehicle, electronic vehicle is running pretty much the same, but they have different components and different ways of making those components work that you have to learn. If not, you will be lost on that vehicle. I've worked on quite a few different types of electric vehicles, and each one is different. Got
it. Thank you, Paul. And where do you see the future of transportation? Do you see us in the next 5 years, 10 years with autonomous vehicles, flying cars? What is your...
So autonomous vehicles are already, we have 7 states that are already legal to have a vehicle drive around without a passenger or a driver in it. And also you can have an unlicensed operator in that vehicle as long as it's an SAE standard of 4 or 5 is the classification. So we have 7 states that allow that already. How many are out there? How many are running? I do not know those statistics, but automated vehicles are already here, and they're legal to run, and they're out there functioning, I'm sure. Do I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a slow progress. 7 states is a lot, but there's still a lot more that got to get on board with that to get that. And the safety levels are there. The safety components are there to make sure that everybody's safe. But I still think not having that personal, response there, I think it would be good to, use to send your kid to school so you don't have to take them or, things like that. But, having that complete trust of having the whole entire roadways covered with autonomous vehicles, I think it's quite a ways away.
Awesome. And moving along to conclude, Paul, what is the best business or personal advice that you ever got that you could share with all the audience?
So one of the most useful personal advices, and probably the best that I've ever received, I'll never forget the day I was walking somewhere and an older gentleman said to me, time goes by faster as you get older. So seize the opportunities that you have, strike while the iron is hot. And now that I'm got the age behind me, it is true. Time goes by faster. I thought at the age of 17, I thought that was crazy talk. And I really now see that, time goes by so fast that we need to take the opportunity while it's in front of us. And we all make mistakes, but we don't know until we actually try. So it's some good advice, and I take it every day now with me.
So how do you use that on a daily basis, if I may?
I take the opportunity. I move forward on decisions quickly and try to make the right decision. Of course, try not to make mistakes, but, not letting opportunities go by, because I have had opportunities in my life that have gone by, but I now look at it and say, you know what, tomorrow's not promised. So let's work on it today and see what happens.
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of investing in experiences because of the same sort of comment that you just mentioned, and advice, not comment, mainly the advice. So I'm a huge proponent of investing in memories, because tomorrow's not guaranteed, right? So I'd rather say that I invested in 1,000 moments with my family and friends than being super rich, but then not have any profound memories.
Yeah, no, the memories are very important. I definitely agree with that.
Totally. So, Paul, thank you very much for participating in our podcast today. It's been a pleasure having you here. How can all the listeners get in touch with you?
Thanks for having me. This was great. They can get in touch with me at Paul.Cassetta at DPV Transportation.com.
Perfect. And we will also share Paul's LinkedIn on the show, as well as Instagram. Again, it's been a pleasure having you here today. Thank you for tuning in. And please stay tuned for the next episode. And please make sure you like and subscribe to the episode. With that being said, you have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Paul.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Ground Transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.